Turn the lights on for the Tyler Bright and Early podcast, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, X, Twitter, and TikTok. You can listen to full episodes on Spotify. You can watch full episodes on YouTube, so you can stay up to date on everything Tyler Bright and Early. And of course, as always, I'm your host, Tyler Bright. We're talking college football, baby. It's back in full force, and we had a great week one to kick off the college football season and had some great games in week zero as well. Of course, Kansas State and Iowa State kicking us off in Ireland, but now we had some great games this past week as well, as is the battle between 1 and number 3, Texas falling to the Ohio State Buckeyes. You know, Arch Manning didn't have the best game on his resume. It was unfortunate for him, and you know, going 17 for 30, 170 yards, a touchdown and an interception, it just seemed like they never really got things clicking. I will say the Ohio State offense wasn't super efficient. Julian Sayin went 13 for 20, 126 yards and a touchdown. So honestly, pretty on par for what Arch did when you're just looking at the stat sheet. Didn't really get much from Jeremiah Smith, you know, and I'll talk a little bit more about him later. You know, didn't get any touchdowns in that game. And it's a little bit of a slow start for him, but he's what many are considering to be the best player in all of college football. So just kind of seeing that from him was a little bit shocking, but Texas is a very great team. They're still in the hunt. Just because they lost that game doesn't really change anything. But so there's that game. And of course, the upset of Florida State over Alabama. 31-17, Thomas Castellanos standing on business. You know, he was talking all this stuff, hyping up this game. And he backed it up, going 9 for 14, 152 yards. And then he was the leading rusher, had 78 yards and a touchdown as well. Alabama, like, what is going on? What is going on? We'll talk about more of them in a little bit, but some other games that happened. Michigan, kind of not as super impressive against New Mexico. They got the win. It was still pretty convincing, and it was 34-17 for the score. But Bryce Underwood had a really great game. If you look at the stat sheet, 21 for 31, 251 yards and a touchdown. Just an impressive showing. What I think is going to be a promising career for Bryce Underwood. He's going to go through some lumps, I feel like, in year one. I've said that in previous episodes before, but I like what he's going to do. But he's going to have a game where he probably scores like he throws for 3 or 4 touchdowns, and then he's going to have a game where he probably throws for like 3 interceptions. You know, a lot of people comparing him to kind of a Cam Newton-esque. He's the top recruit of this quarterback caliber since Cam Newton came out. I disagree a little bit, but he's still a talented player, and I think he's going to help will them to a couple of wins. And then LSU and Clemson, that was a great game as well. Garrett Nussmeier, I'll talk about him in a little bit as well, but this doesn't change anything for Clemson because you lost this game. You know, 17-10, it was a low-scoring game, but still very competitive. Dabo Swinney, obviously, probably has a little bit of a fire ignited because of that game, and now he wants his guys to roll, and I think Clemson is going to do just that. They're going to roll in these next couple of weeks. But and then North Carolina put up a dookie against TCU on Monday night. Just absolute no-show from that team, and the worst defensive effort we've ever seen from a Bill Belichick coach team. You know, that's what happens. You know, it's kind of similar. I feel like it's kind of similar to what Colorado was with all these transfers. I guess Colorado's not Colorado. Florida State's a better example with all the transfers coming in because Colorado did great last season, or good, I should say. But now it's kind of more so, is TCU better than my expectations, or is North Carolina just not going to be that great this year? I think it's a little bit of a mix of both. Their offense was, outside of that first drive, just had nothing going for them on the day, and just nothing really going for it. And but I did like Max Johnson when he came in. It just, by the time he came in, it was just a little bit too little too late. So is what it is. Last game I'll talk about from last week, you had the Miami and Notre Dame game, 27-24 victory for the Hurricanes. Mario Cristobal getting the job done. That was a pretty key win. Carson Beck, 20 for 31, 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also, Mark Fletcher Jr., 15 carries, 66 yards. He's a good power back, a kind of bell cow kind of running back for that Cane squad. I really liked him. I liked what I saw from him. He looked like a powerful running back. I'm excited to see more of what I can see from him in the future. You know, CJ Carr did pretty well in his first game. 19 for 30, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. It felt a lot of those drives early on. He was a lot of like short passing game, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep clicking that, find your rhythm to get yourself settled into the game, and then you can take those big shots downfield. Now, CJ Carr had like a Johnny Manziel moment where he was like rolling back to his left and right back and rolled all the way to his left side. And then the defensive backs for Miami just seemed lacking. Like they just lacked on that play, and he just threw a dot and it was a touchdown. So a promising start for CJ Carr, obviously the grandson of Lloyd Carr. Was a longtime Michigan coach, won a national championship with Brian Griese, and Tom Brady was on that team as well. So winning the Rose Bowl all the way back in 1997. So, but yeah, that's kind of all the games that really stuck out to me from the week one. Now, we're going to take a look at the AP poll for this upcoming week 2. And basically, looking at the AP poll, I'm looking at some teams, the consensus. So let's just go through the consensus right here quickly of the rundown of teams in the AP poll as I bring it up and load it. So you got Ohio State at number 1, as they should be, Penn State, LSU, Georgia, Miami, Oregon, Texas, Clemson, Notre Dame, South Carolina, Illinois, Arizona State, Florida, Florida State, Michigan, Iowa State, SMU, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama at 21, Tennessee at 22, Indiana 23, 24, Texas Tech, and 25, the Utah Utes. So now I'm looking at a detailed, it's a ballot basically of all of the voters who have a vote in the AP poll, and there are some interesting picks to say the least. Majority of the voters have Ohio State as number 1. Penn State got a number 1 selection. I got a few number 1 selections. LSU got, I think, 3 from when I was looking at it, and one of those was the Baton Rouge Riders, so of course she's gonna say "Go Tigers" and put them in that column. But then Reese Davis from ESPN has the LSU Tigers at number 1. He's got Ohio State at number 2, and then Miami at 3, and Penn State at 4. The tough thing about doing the AP poll so early in the season, now that we've had more games come around, it's a little bit better. But it's kind of interesting to see the auto correction from week 1 to week 2. Because how can you really put an AP poll top 25 at the beginning of the season when you have nothing to base off of except for last season and maybe, of course, the few transfers and coaching changes here and there? It always seems a little bit weird to me, but college football has always done that, and it's so based in tradition that I understand it. But when you see Alabama's all over the board everywhere after their loss to Florida State. Although the funny thing about the AP poll is sometimes the voters, they don't watch these games, so they're kind of just throwing a list together. And some of these show, we could put them on blast, but I think one of the highest rankings for Alabama is at 11. You have it at 11. Like this one writer from the Albuquerque Journal, he has Alabama at 11, Florida State at 15. How? Why? How? How is this happening? Did you just throw a list together and that's just kind of how it ended up? Why is Alabama, who lost to Florida State convincingly, at 11 in your poll, but you have FSU at 15? Math ain't math in there. Math ain't math in there. Speaking of the Alabama Crimson Tide, what is the water looking like in Tuscaloosa? I know it's probably not looking the best. It's probably looking like Kalen DeBoer on the hot seat. I will say pump the brakes a little bit because they got a whole season to play. Obviously, I will say after watching that game, I think Florida State's a little bit better than what I was projecting them to be. I still think they're going to be I still feel like they're going to lose some games. I still feel like they're kind of in that 8-4, 9-3 range. But I don't know. It's just Ty Simpson. I don't know. I just don't. Ty Simpson did not look like he should have been the starter for Alabama out there. He looked like he was seeing ghosts. And if that's what you're seeing in practice and that's what you got from him, I don't know what to tell you because yikes. And that happens a lot. You see that happen all the time with these you have these players who are so great at practice, but the time when it comes to game, they just can't produce. And I don't know if it's just because of the setting. If you look at Ty Simpson's stats, 23 for 43, 254 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know. It's just why didn't you go after a transfer portal? Why didn't you go after a quarterback in the transfer portal? If that was the result you're getting, this is not going to be a promising year for you, Alabama. I don't think you're going to make the playoff at this point. If I were to do my ranking, my AP poll, kind of vote, if you will, I would put Alabama still ranked I would put them in like the lower teens to maybe even like a 20. Kind of like that, like 17 to 19 range is kind of where I would put them, but just yikes. But pump the brakes a little bit because the tough part about Kalen DeBoer in taking this job at Alabama is whoever was going to replace Nick Saban was not going to live up to those expectations unless they were getting a coach who was unrealistically never going, or he was realistically never going to go to Alabama, such as a Kirby Smart. Obviously, maybe he could have filled the role of Nick Saban, but he's not going. He's not going to Alabama. He was always going to stay at Georgia. Another example is Dabo Sweeney. Maybe a little bit more likely, because he's an that's his alma mater and he's an alum, but he's entrenched at Clemson. He's gonna stay. He's gonna be a Clemson ride or die. And Steve Sarkisian, as of right now, Texas is the better program than Alabama as of right now, based on the players that they have. And it just doesn't really make sense. Why would you? If anything, it's lateral at best. So if you're looking at candidates, like I don't like who would you get? Who would you get if you fire Kalen DeBoer? That's automatically going to be better. And of course, a lot of Crimson Tide fans will say, "Oh, anyone better than Kalen DeBoer." But this is coming from a fan base that has won so many national championships under Nick Saban, has some of the greatest teams in college football history played under Nick Saban at Alabama. Don't want to say you're spoiled, but you're spoiled a little bit. You're a little bit spoiled. You need a little bit of a little humble pie a little bit. But maybe Lane Kiffin can do it. Maybe that's kind of one that kind of jumps out to mind. You have Lane Kiffin who has experience in the SEC, and maybe he can come in there. But and maybe he's peaked his potential at Ole Miss. Can he win a national championship at Ole Miss? I personally don't think so, but I'm never going to say never. I think he can definitely get them to a playoff if all things kind of fall his way. But I can't guarantee that Lane Kiffin's going to do anything different than what Kalen DeBoer did today, or not today. What Kalen DeBoer did last week against Florida State. It's a tough position to be in. It really is. And Kalen DeBoer, he's gonna. The good thing is you have a cupcake game this week, so you should get a lot of points. It should be a beatdown on the SEC network. You can go and enjoy that. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I got on Alabama. But yeah, it's definitely a tough showing so far. So moving on, we'll take a look at some of my top 5 Heisman picks. So who are the guys that stood out to me if I were to do a top 5? Who are the Heisman favorites right now? Right now, number 1, I'm going with Garrett Nussmeier. He had a great game, a 17-10 win. He went 29 for 39 passing, 248 yards, a 74.4 QB percentage. I like that. I like that a lot. Had a touchdown in there too. Against a Clemson defense that was, I think, is really good. I think all around Clemson is still the best team in the ACC. Although Miami's going to put up a fight with them. I like Nussmeier. I like what he does. I like what he does at LSU. LSU finally getting the win in their home in their first game of the season, in the opening game of the season. Brian Kelly, I think this could be the year for LSU, kind of taking advantage now that Alabama, I don't think they're going to be much in the playoff picture if we see more of what we got against FSU this year. I like LSU. I like Nussmeier, and he's got that kind of moxie, that kind of attitude. He's very confident in his abilities, and I just like the leadership. Just listening to his post-game press conference, his post-game interview, and just the stuff. I like the way that he carries himself. Just a little bit of intangible that I like from him. The next guy at number 2, I'm gonna go with Lenore Sellers. I wasn't sure. I felt like he was getting a little bit hyped preseason, but he showed it against Virginia Tech, just making runs when he should have been sacked for 5 to 10 yards back. He ends up getting a first down on a 3rd and 15, 234 yards. And then he threw for 209 yards, going 12 for 19. He had a total of 234 yards of total offense. That just goes to show the versatility. A lot of people, he's also another guy that people are comparing to Cam Newton, and or I think I've even heard a little bit of Ben Roethlisberger a little bit, just because he has that 6'3", 240-pound frame. He's gonna be a high prospect. Both Nussmeier and Sellers are gonna be high prospects in the NFL draft. But yeah, that's my number 2. Now my number 3, I got Thomas Castellanos. Mainly because kind of similar to like a Shedeur Sanders of last season, where he's Obviously, he's very like they love talking about him in the media. Everyone's hot on Thomas Castellanos because he stood on business and beat Alabama convincingly. As I mentioned, 9 for 14, 152 yards, and then 78 yards rushing on a touchdown. Like I feel like that's should put you in the conversation. Even though we don't think Alabama is as good this year, I still feel like he's good. Now, will he maintain that spot? Only time will tell. But next up at number 4, I got Jeremiah Smith. And yes, I know that he had a slow start. I know that he had a slow start, didn't have any touchdowns, but I still feel like he's the best like position player in college football. He's a strong receiver, and once they get a little bit more of the rhythm and get out of that kind of slow slump, he's gonna cook. He's gonna have games where he has like three touchdown catches. It's just gonna happen. It's gonna happen. He's one of the best wide receiver um, recruits that we've seen in a long time. These players coming out here, and I like Jeremiah Smith. I like him a lot, and it's tough though because you're in a competitive Big Ten, but he's gonna have a game where he's gonna put on a show. The tough thing for him is he's a wide receiver. I didn't want this whole list to be quarterbacks, and I do feel like whenever you have like a Heisman, whenever they have the Heisman Trophy presentations and the ceremonies, they always have one position, if not two or more position players that are not quarterbacks. Especially, I mean, heck, Travis Hunter won it last year. He wasn't a quarterback. But yeah, and the last guy I got to go Carson Beck. You know, especially with all the drama of him going to Miami, dating one of the Cavender twins. You know, he went down there just for her, and then that old drama. He had an impressive game against one of the top defenses in the country in Notre Dame. So, and I was hesitant. I was like, I don't know how well Carson Beck's going to do. He regressed from his 23 season in 24. I don't know how he's going to do. Miami, Mario Cristobal's not a very great game manager when it comes to making decisions in times. He's had some boneheaded decisions that he's made, but they did well in week 1. And I think that's deserving to put him on the list so far. So, yeah, that's my kind of my Heisman favorite. So now we'll kind of preview some of these games that we got coming up here in week 2, some games that kind of like stick out to me. So of course, I believe we got Michigan at Oklahoma. That one's gonna be a dandy game. Of course, you know, Michigan coming off a little bit of a slow win, but a win's a win nonetheless. That's gonna be at 7:30 p.m. on ABC in Oklahoma. That one's gonna be a great game. John Mateer in Oklahoma, are they the real deal? This is gonna be their first big test. You know, Brent Venables taking $1 million pay cut just so he can allocate funds elsewhere. I wasn't super hot on Oklahoma, but it feels like a lot of people like late before the season started were starting picking Oklahoma as a potential playoff team. I don't see it quite yet. I need to see a little bit more, but this is a great game to see it against Michigan. So other games that kind of stick out to me. So we got Iowa State. That's a rivalry game. That's always a competitive game. Iowa State dominated against their FCS team that they faced last week. Iowa, they got the win, of course, in their first game. I'm going to probably roll with the Hawkeyes just because like I feel like they just own that rivalry game. I like Tim Lester as an offensive coordinator. You know, he kind of runs more of that old school pro style offense that obviously Kirk Ferentz was so familiar with and doesn't want to change because you know, with the nepotism of him having his son as the offensive coordinator. But since he's made that change for Tim Lester has produced really good offenses while he was a quarterback coach at Purdue, while he was at Syracuse. So Tim Lester, even though like his teams may not jump off the wall and have these big offenses, like they usually have pretty good statistical records, and I think Iowa's going to continue in that trend. And I also really like their quarterback. He's a transfer from South Dakota State that they had a deep run in the FCS. So that game between Iowa and Iowa State, and I just lost it. So of course that's what happens. That game's at noon on Fox. So that's going to be a good one. I'm going with the Hawkeyes. Another game that sticks out, of course. Oh, Ole Miss and Kentucky. That's kind of a rematch from last season. Lane Kiffin and Austin Simmons at quarterback. Although they had a different team last season. They had Jackson Dart as their quarterback. Kentucky kind of ruined their chances at a playoff. You know, I know they beat them earlier on in the year, so we didn't really know what to expect from Ole Miss. I think a lot of people were high on Ole Miss, but this is your chance to kind of right the wrongs. This is a Kentucky team that I don't think is, quite frankly, all that good. You know, they kind of squeaked by against Toledo in last week. I think it was like 24-16. they squeaked by. So it's like, I think Ole Miss is going to win convincingly, especially with that kind of disdain from last season. They had also a lot of drama in their game last week because one of the Georgia State players snapped the chain off of an Ole Miss player. I don't know what that was all about, but also credit to Del McGee for disciplining him and not having him play the entire game. That really sets the tone for the culture. Del McGee was a great assistant coach while he was at Georgia, had a successful background as a Georgia high school football head coach and won, I think, numerous state titles. So, credit to him. I really respect Del McGee, and best of luck to the Georgia State Panthers moving forward this season. That I like that. You love to see that things, because a lot of times where that kind of stuff gets like pushed under the rug, he's grabbing it by the arms and saying, "Hey, we're not all about that," and I appreciate that. I think that's great. But so Ole Miss and Kentucky, they face off on 3:30 on Saturday on ABC, and kind of another week once again where it's not a lot of games that are kind of jump off the charts when you look at the schedules, whatever app you're using. But because it's still early on. But I think those are pretty good games. Also, I don't know if I picked Oklahoma and Michigan. I am picking Oklahoma. I am going to pick Oklahoma just because I think with them being at home and having the atmosphere there, a lot of fans are going to come out there. And Michigan, I think it's just going to be a test for Bryce Underwood. You didn't do as hot in the game before that, so now you're on the road. I think it's just going to be a slow start for the Wolverines. So, yeah, that's my thought on that one. But that's all I got for college football. I kind of want to take a look at something going on in the NFL because NFL starts this week. They have their first game on Thursday. It's the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions, against the Dallas Cowboys. I'm picking the Eagles all day, any day. I'm sorry. This Cowboys team, they're going to crash and burn this season. They are not going to do good this year. I'm so not convinced in this team. The whole Micah Parsons thing, the long negotiations, they couldn't agree on a deal, and just chaos. And then Jerry Jones talking in the media, mispronouncing his name, saying that they really want to focus on making their defense better. Then why did you get rid of Micah Parsons? And then just for you to do just days later, extend Deron Bland? Huh? What is going on? What is going on in Dallas? Jerry Jones, it's time. Pass it on to your son or just, And then also, I didn't think it was great for them promoting Schottenheimer as their head coach. I mean, why? I feel like you could have gotten some better candidates that were on the board. Dak Prescott's back, I know, but I'm just so not convinced in this Cowboys team. And this is an Eagles team that I think, if they're going to go back to back, I can totally see them going back to back. They have the right mindset of saying that we're not the defending champions. We're trying to win the championship. It's a new season. Forget about what happened last season. That happened last season. So I like Jalen Hurts. I like Saquon Barkley and company. It's going to be really interesting. So that's kind of my look. I'm picking Philly. Philly's winning. I think Dallas ain't making the playoffs. And they're America's team. They're America's team, as so many people love to say. But we'll kind of end on a little bit of a fun segment. So I decided that, we're going to do some cornhole. And what we're going to talk about. Why are we talking about cornhole, Tyler? I decided to make some matchups, kind of like a tournament setup, if you will, of a NFL, NBA, MLB All-Star cornhole. Who wins? Take a look at the roster. So we got 2 teams per league for each league. So you got 2 NBA teams, 2 MLB teams, and 2 NFL teams. One NBA roster is going to consist of Kobe Bryant and Shaq. Kobe and Shaq back at it. The duo that dominated the early 2000s, having a three-peat in the NBA Finals and winning the championship. They're back. You got to have that Mamba mentality when you're playing cornhole. Who's a perfect player when he just goes and throws the bag for the cornhole? Also, do you call it cornhole or do you call it bags? Sorry, I'm getting a little bit on a tangent, but some people call it cornhole, some people call it bags. Let me know in the comments. Maybe we can do a poll. Who knows? I call it cornhole personally. But Kobe Bryant, all you got to do is throw the bag up and say Kobe, and it's probably going to go in the hole. And then, of course, Shaq, I just like the chemistry there, so I think they make a good teammate. The other NBA team, Steph Curry, the three-point specialist. By the time he's all retired, he's going to be by far and away the leader in 3 points in the NBA. He's going to have all those records. I couldn't think of a better person to, have at that position. So we got him. And then I gotta add someone. I gotta add a little bit of an international perspective. So I got the Greek Freak. Greek Freak, I got him. I think he'd be great. Great guy for this pick. Sorry, back here. So I think Steph and the Greek Freak, he's going to dominate. He's got that presence. He's a clutch performer. 2021 NBA Finals clincher, score 50 points. If you need him to rally at the end on the board, get some bags on the board, he can do it. So that's the NBA teams. So next up, we got MLB. So who's the MLB? Who are the MLB teams? I think you got the Pinstripers. You got the Pinstripe team. You got Derek Jeter, who has one of the best defensive plays in all of baseball history. You've seen it time and time again, extending his body out there to make a play and then guns it over to first to make the out. Iconic. Also, he's from Kalamazoo. So shout out to my KZoo boy. And then he's paired up with Mariano Rivera, another international player. I got to get pitchers. There's two pitchers on each team. He's the best closer in MLB history. So if you need him to close out and get the save, he'll do it. And the communication between those two, it's going to be perfect. So the other baseball team is going to be a little bit more current. Age might be a little bit of a factor. So I got Clayton Kershaw. He's on one of the best teams in baseball, the Dodgers. Always year in after year out, have a successful team and always are attracting free agents to come out to sunny California. And he's a pitcher. He's been dominating for years to come. I think he can dominate on the boards as well. Nolan Arenado, he's a Golden Glover winner. He's going to produce as well. I have no doubt that Nolan Arenado. God, come on, Tyler. Get yourself together. But just 10 consecutive Golden Gloves from 2013 to 2022. You can't really argue with that. So if he's able to make those strong defensive plays, obviously he can be defensive on the board. He can knock them off. Once he sees a bag on the board, he can knock it off. He can get it on the board. Just be consistent. That's all we're asking for. Then you got Peyton Manning and Calvin Johnson. Now, why that duo? It's a little bit interesting. I'm calling them the Mega Mile High team. Mega Mile High team. I like it. A little bit of Megatron, a little bit of Mile High. Or like maybe we could add Omaha to it. I don't know what I'm doing. But Peyton Manning, the most cerebral, smartest player probably arguably in NFL history. He's able to make those audibles, make those checkdowns, be able to communicate with Calvin on what route he needs to go with the bag. So I think he can do that. And Calvin, one of the best receivers in NFL history. We had a couple options here, but I decided to go with Calvin because I love Detroit Lions. I'm a Lions guy. I got to go with Calvin Johnson, and I have his jersey. So next up, the last team, got Tom Brady and Ray Lewis. One of the best quarterbacks of all time, arguably one of the best NFL players of all time, against one of the best defensive players of all time in Ray Lewis. What a perfect combo they could be. They can have that kind of moxie, that attitude, that swagger. It's a perfect option. So who's winning? I like all these teams. I think they're all competitive. I think they can bring some pros and pros to each team. Not necessarily any cons. It's a pretty stacked team. So let me know. Let me know who's winning. Who's winning the cornhole match? Who's winning the NFL, NBA, MLB All-Star Cornhole Challenge? Let me know. That's going to do it for today's episode. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and X. Listen to full episodes on Spotify and watch full episodes on YouTube. This is the Tyler Bright and Early Podcast, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football center.